Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Publishing Summit 2023. We are delighted to have you join us for this session on the Accessible Backlist Laboratory. My name is Gautier. I am a project manager for EDRLab, the European Digital Reading Laboratory, a non-profit organization dedicated to open source software and open standards for the publishing sector worldwide. Today, we will present ABELab, a research and development project aiming to provide accurate data and guidelines to make sure that as much ebooks as possible get an accessible life after the entry force of the European Accessibility Act. Chiara Desmartins, accessibility expert at Fondazione, and Ten van der Togt, researcher at KB, the National Library of the Netherlands, will share the screen with me to present the project activities and first results. Before we begin, I'd like to thank once again our sponsor, Foundation Radium, Glassbox, Audioboost, and The Mark for their support. I would also like to extend my appreciation to Fondazione, who participated in the organization of the event accessibility session in the framework of Aldus Hub, the European Books Fairs Networks. As you know, we encourage you to actively participate in the session by using the Q&A tool available in the webinar. Towards the end of the session, our panelists will take the time to address your questions. We value your engagement and insight, so please don't hesitate to interact with us. Before we proceed, you should also note that this session is being recorded, allowing you to refer back to it later. As part of our community, EDRLab members will also receive written synthesis for each session. Thank you once again for joining us and enjoy the session. So ABELab stands for Accessible Backlist Ebook Laboratory. It's a project funded by Creative Europe, a European Commission program that invests in action to enhance cultural diversity and address the need and challenge of the cultural and creative sectors. The project is coordinated by EDRLab as technical expert committed to the development of an open, interoperable, and accessible digital reading ecosystem. Two organizations are partners of the project: the Fondazione, Libri Italiani Accessibili, a non-profit organization that promotes the culture of accessibility in the publishing fields, internationally recognized, expert in the production, control, dissemination, certification, and distribution of accessible digital books. LIA manages the Italian Accessible eBooks catalog, which contains more than 30,000 accessible books, ebooks. The National Library of the Netherlands, KB, is responsible for the digital infrastructure of all public libraries in the Netherlands, including service for people with disability. KB brings its expertise in library science research, digitalization of cultural heritage, and supporting the cultural heritage sector in its digital transformation. The aim of the ABELab project is to provide guidelines to European publishers for boosting the remediation of the ebook backlist and convert them into accessible. It's a 18-month research and development project. We started in January 2023 and will be ending in June 2024. Any publication will be available at abelab.eu, the project website. And if you want to contact the team, you can drop an email to contact@abelab.eu. So for the context, as you know, by June 2025, the European Accessibility Act will take effect, affecting many product services, including ebooks. On digital platform, we know that the long tails, which are older and niche titles, are more important than in physical book world, where stores tend to promote bestseller and relatively new material. But most of the backlist titles sells only a few copies per year, and many titles have a quite complex structure. If accessibility is required, by making title accessible, involve high cost, publishers should remove such ebooks from the market. This is a risk that we see for 2025, and we see it particularly concerning when cultural diversity of content and social inclusion of people with visual and cognitive disabilities are at stake. Earlier studies have shown very different results. We've seen estimations from 0 to 5,000 euro per book for the accessibility remediation of the 3.5 million ebooks counted in the backlists of European markets. To resolve the equation, we believe that we can act by segmentation. So we'll dig later into this. We think we can segment by categories: fiction, technology, arts, medicine, society, etc., and by formats. Is that a PDF, an EPUB 2, an EPUB 3, etc. The main solution is that different books appeal different solutions. Where are we now? On the project, we first been collecting data from market operators. This activity has been done, and Ted will provide us with some insights. We are still now getting sample files from publishers, and Chiara will explain us how we'll be using those samples to have a view of what is needed for remediation. From these two entry points, we'll do a gap analysis per type and formats, and we'll evaluate full remediation process. Our objective 1 has been reached. That means we've collected and analyzed the detailed composition of ebook backlists in Europe. We had 18 countries, but I believe this has changed now to 22 countries providing basic data, 5 of them providing detailed data. We already have 6 countries that offer a test publication and more than 240 sample publications from publishers. Those numbers are to be more and more in the upcoming months, so do not hesitate to contact us if you wish to participate in the project and offer us test publication so that we can have a clear view on the problems we meet in ebooks. This is a project timeline, so we are at a third of the project. We've taken time to collect data and collect sample files. It's, I believe, the most complex part because it's all about getting people to know about the project, to enlist, and to provide us with data and files. By the end of 2023, we hope to have already an overview of remediation tools, some element and tool mappings, and starting the tool testings. And of course, all the last deliverable, like evaluation of one cost, organization, and evaluation of production and development costs will be released by June 2024. So that was an overview of the project. Ted, it's up to you to tell us what we found on the data.
Yes, good morning. First, I want to tell you a little bit about what we found in the data we got from many organizations, many ISBN agencies, distributors, resellers, libraries on the backlist. And if I may have the next slide, Gautier. The first thing was, what do we exactly understand under the backlist? Because that's also different between people. Some people think about backlist as only those titles which do not, older titles which do not sell anymore. But basically we here understand everything which has been published already. So in the last 20 years, a lot of ebooks have entered the market. And we had to find some kind of definition what to include in this research and what not. We decided to focus on commercial digital books. So we also know that there are a lot more publications on the market, either by self-publishers or by governments. But since they are not affected directly by the European Accessibility Act, self-publisher often micro enterprises, and for government there are other things. And of course we can learn from each other, but we want to focus especially on commercial digital books. So we primarily looked at digital books that had an ISBN number. We have challenges there because every country is doing different things. ISBN agencies we contacted sometimes have a different way of operating. Some have been giving ISBN numbers to government offices. Others have been giving large blocks of ISBN numbers to publishers, and they do not know exactly how many are used. But that was a good start. We got from many countries, we got insight of what was locally registered as an ebook. And we understand that, of course, there is an overlap between ebooks on the market in these countries with what is locally produced and what is produced in other countries, and even outside the EU. So the first numbers, if we count them, it is about 3.5 million books which has been produced in locally in the countries. And apart from that, if we talk to Nielsen or we talk to other parties outside the US, outside the EU, we see that even more books are entering the European market from the UK, from Canada, from the US. So we have to be very careful when we talk about numbers. It's all estimates, and also like others have told in earlier sessions, like the Federation of European Publishers, it's a bit complex to get the right definitions. One of the interesting things also was that we saw that already part of the ebooks that had been registered in the past have already been disappeared from the market. So if I just look at our own country, the Netherlands, we know that from the 100,000 ebooks which has been published locally, only 70,000 have been left over in commerce. But that's not the whole picture, because we also know that we also have hundreds of thousands of ebooks from other European countries, and if you count even the Amazons and the Googles, we have even 1 million books which are available to Dutch customers. So we try to make as good as an overview. One other thing we wanted to know is how exactly this backlist is put together. What categories do we have? And for this, we used an international schema, because otherwise it's very hard to compare it between European countries. One difficulty here is that this schema is relative recent. So if you look also to older titles, they have not a thema category attached, and we made some mappings to make the best overview as possible. What you see here in the graph is that in the Netherlands, this is just one example, there are a lot of fiction books, almost over 40%. And of course, these are relative text only. We see other things like children's books and books about society, books about history, and even we get smaller and smaller percentages. Why we find this important is we want to have samples of as many categories as possible to make sure we do a good representative study. If we only would focus on very easy novels and thrillers, we would draw conclusions about remediation processes and costs, which are way too far off. So we really need to take everything into account. And then we had to look also about formats. We see that a lot of ebooks are in EPUB, but we also noticed that, especially in some countries, the picture here is about the Netherlands, where most books are EPUB. But if we look to other countries like Germany, we see also that there are a lot of, especially non-fiction books, study books, still available in PDF. So PDF is also a format we have to look into to see what remediation is possible for that. We also see that there is a small percentage of the market already in EPUB 3, and although EPUB 3 is already on the market from 2011, the adoption has been low. And it's important to know this because remediation might be very different for these different type of titles. Okay, the next slide. The trends, what we saw was that we see that the reflowable books, so the book that can adapt easily to your screen, are being replaced by EPUB 3 reflowable in a slow pace. It's happening, but in certain countries we see still a lot of EPUB 2 being produced today. It also have to do with well, what the reseller channels ask. The adoption of EPUB 3 fixed layouts turned out to be very low, though it's also on the market for a long time. It's not well, it has not replaced PDF in a lot of categories, and that means that there is still a lot of PDF around. So if we go to our findings a bit more, the diversity is pretty huge. We know, and we also know that from earlier research, that you cannot remediate every book with the same remediation flow. There will be different tools for different categories and for different type of books. And with all those processes, there will be different costs. So it is also not possible to say, okay, remediation per title will cost X, because it very much depends on what type of book you have. Are there many pictures in it, or is it text only? How is it constructed? And the challenge for us will be, from the samples we get in, to find patterns, to understand really what categories of subcategories there are and how these should be remediated. It also showed us that per country there are large differences. So the Netherlands, for instance, is very different from Italy or Germany or France, which we all have very detailed data on. So we have to be careful also to make assumptions about everything is the same, and also the economic impact is everywhere the same, because it's really different. One of the challenges also was that the categorization methods, so see, we used the thema schema for making categories, is a good start to use for finding samples, but it will not be a one-to-one mapping for remediation flows. For example, a history book can be a text-only history book, but it can also be a very complex book where there are a lot of images, timelines, and other things in. So we have to be careful to say, okay, we can find a process and a cost for every category. So at the moment, it's still an early stage to make conclusions. So we are too early for conclusions, but we use this to make a very good sample set, so we know that what we do is representative enough. So the main parts will be, well, the fiction thing is still a lot of books are in EPUB 2. And EPUB 3 is slowly taking over, but definitely not in every country as quick as possible. And for non-fiction, we see a mixture of both EPUB 2, EPUB 3, but limited, and more PDF than at least I expected. So I think that was it for the well, the analysis so far, and we can go, I think, then to Chiara to see what we are going to do on this basis.
Thank you, Ted. Hello, everyone. The last part of the panel will focus on an overview of the testing that will be done on the sample files provided by publishers collaborating to the ABE Lab project. Next slide, please. So as Ted and Gautier mentioned before, ebooks of different categories have different needs, may have different accessibility issues, and require different approaches to be remediated, to be made accessible, depending on their format, so EPUB 2, EPUB 3, PDF, or EPUB 3 fixed layout, their structure and also their content, if they have images, tables, or mathematical formulas, they have different needs and so requires different activities. So our objective is to define a classification of ebooks that fits the needs of an efficient remediations. The tests will be performed using sample publications collected from publishers, and since the test must be as representative as possible of the backlist, we've defined a wish list specifying the percentage of ebooks of different format and of different theme code, based also on the year of production. In fact, the version of the format and particularly the EPUB format has some impact on the accessibility issues that can occur. And we are trying to collect files according to this wish list. We have already collected more than 200 files. We are still collecting more. So we are quite confident that we can, at the end, obtain a representative collection. Next slide, please. We also decided not to reinvent the wheel because we realized that there are already some effective tools that are used in the supply chain that can be used to extract a first set of raw data from files. So we'll use them as a starting point. These tools are, for example, EPUB Check, which is the official conformance checker for EPUB publications, and it is used not to check the accessibility of the EPUB files, or at least this is not the main object or the main feature, but it is used to check the formal validity of the code of the EPUB files. Then we have ACE by Daisy, which is a free open source tool developed to check the accessibility of EPUB files based on the EPUB accessibility. Then we have Iridium Go Toolkit, which is an EPUB parser embedding accessibility metadata inference. While for the PDF format, we'll use PAC, which stands for PDF Accessibility Checker, which is a WCAG compliance validator. Each tool outputs a report in JSON format, so we expect to have for each file as many JSON reports as the tools that will be used. Next slide, please. So in addition to the standard full report of each tool, there are other data that we can obtain. So for example, the content of the metadata section for the EPUB files, or the metadata file when it comes to PDF, the content of manifest section for EPUB files, but also data such as the presence of page list and its completeness for EPUB, the number of images or of audio and video resources, number of text characters, and many more. But this is still not enough to properly categorize ebooks and to assess the features and accessibility issues. So this analysis can be refined further. And next slide, please. And for this reason, Fondazione, with the support of the project partners, is developing an ad hoc script to extract even more data from the files. For example, statistics on the usage of HTML tags for EPUB files, or statistics on the use of attributes and their values, again for EPUB files. And even more, this list is not comprehensive since the script aims to extract even more detailed data. At the end, the outputs of the tools and of the script will be combined in order to have for each file a single JSON file, so a single report. The results of the analysis of each file will be collected in an Excel file, and we will then analyze the overall results of all the files, and will elaborate the necessary statistics to formalize the ebook categories based on some parameters, for example, the file format and file version, the number of images or number of tables, indexes and biographies, and so on. So doing this, we expect to be able to identify at least 3 main categories based on the complexity of the files that for simplicity we call low, medium, and high complexity files. Next slide, please. So after defining the categories, we will perform also a gap analysis to identify the accessibility issues of the sample publications of different categories based on the WCAG, the EPUB Accessibility, and the European Accessibility Act. This will allow us to identify, first of all, the recurrent accessibility issues that need to be resolved, the necessary remediation activities to fix them and to group them by difficulty, but also which remediation activities can be solved automatically and which, on the contrary, requires necessarily a human intervention. The recurrent accessibility issue can be interpreted as the steps that must compose the remediation workflows to remediate inaccessible books of different categories. So to conclude, let's have a look at the next steps. So we will prepare test files, that is representative files to test the different remediation tools. And we will test different remediation tools in order to test different processes, so different workflows for different ebooks, for different category of ebooks, and to evaluate their performance. So in fact, this activity requires some sub-steps. For example, preparing a matrix of tools functionalities to see which accessibility issue each tool can fix, and then performing a gap analysis, comparing what each tool promises versus what it can actually do and how well. That is, tools promises versus tools performances and shortcomings. Based on this, we'll define an evaluation matrix to assess the quality of the remediation. And we will also identify which remediation activities can be effectively done automatically by the tools and which will require a human intervention. So based on the tests of the different workflows with the different tools, we aim at estimating the times and the costs of the remediation activities for ebooks of different categories and of different complexity, which have different accessibility issues and so requires different interventions. So I thank you for your attention and return the floor to Gautier and Ted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chiara. Thank you very much, Ed. So let's see what are the questions here. So first, thank you, Marie-Laurence, for posting the link to the what we call the press release, which is a written analysis of what Ted has presented, and the activities presented by Chiara will be presented, published, at least a context and the resume will be published once it's been done, because we, as Chiara really well explained, we expect to make our work evolve when performing the testings. So we have a question from Vincent Gros, which is, will there be open dataset at the end of the project? Do one of you want to respond?
I think that we will open as much as possible aggregated data, so we will tell our conclusions. But we of course will not share anything about the copyrighted files that publishers shared with us. So I'm not sure what exactly you're looking for, but we will be so transparent as possible how we come to conclusions and how we tested and what we tested in the tools. But of course we cannot share the copyrighted files of the publishers.
Yes, I could just add that for publisher and listing and providing us with file, we won't provide per book or per collection analysis. Our analysis is on big data. We look at, we have 300 files in a while, so we will just not be able to provide participant publishers with direct input related to the files. But of course, a publisher who knows this file should find into the published things, into the gap analysis, should be able to identify what is related to his his proper production. Maybe I could add also, it's not in a slide because it's still a discussion in progress, but we are discussing with Hachette and with Demark about having an insight, an analysis of their file depots that we will treat in a separate way, because we can't add 100,000 files the same way as 300 files, but we up to we are in good discussion, and we hope to be able to provide also a more macro view, quantitative view, in addition to a qualitative view on the 300 files. Okay, so I don't know, Vincent, have we responded to your question, or? And does anyone have any other question? Okay, so great. If there's no question, I think we can close here this this webinar. Just to record to you that the ABELab.eu website is here for any publication. We don't have syndication on this website, so it's up to you to go and check regularly. And of course, we'll be providing more insights as the project is going during the different events, books fairs, and everywhere where we can provide information on the ongoing of the project. So stay tuned. I don't know that, Chiara, do you want to add a word?
No, if people have, there are publishers out who have questions, of course, welcome also to provide their both the questions and also help us with additional files. We will also approach people for specific segments if we feel that we are not confident that we have enough of those type of files. But I think with the current set, we are already a good way in the direction.
Well, many thanks to both of you. And for everyone, we see you later for the following webinars.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.